Hello, and welcome to the NOTstalgia podcast.
A podcast where we discuss the retelling or continuation of pop culture favorites as seen through a queer and feminist lens.
My name is Eric Lefebvre.
And my name is Jessica Tercero.
And this week we have a guest.
Another one, back to
another
back.
guest. This week we have Stephanie Graye from the Spicy Girls podcast, from the band Background Character and the band Earth Program. Steph, welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be here.
This week we chose a couple movies that you really like, Alien and Prometheus, to kind of break it down. Some more Ridley Scott, as if we haven't done almost his entire backlog. No, we really just did Blade Runner. But it's wild that Alien and Blade Runner they were like back-to-back movies of his.
There is like a big conspiracy too on how like they're technically the same universe, which I will definitely link that.
So
in the
like
show
that's
notes.
Earth at the same time or something.
I think there's like 150 years in between like the time frames of the film, but like Blade Runner was first and then Alien happened later on. Like Tycho became Wayland Industries and like this whole weird... So it's like also like when you like take that into context with like the replicants and how like, you know, they were not supposed to be around, and then David and, you know, Ash, and then it's like, ooh, this is cute. I like this.
That is pretty cool.
So anyways, why did you choose these movies, Steph?
I am a huge fan of Alien and Aliens. It's mostly those two movies that I am like huge fans of. We'll get into Prometheus and stuff. The later Ridley Scott stuff. But yeah, I'm just a huge fan of H.R. Giger, and like my favorite movie of all time is Aliens. So like number one favorite movie. I have like a xenomorph tattoo. I've got like all that stuff.
Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I can post it to whatever if you'd like me to.
Yes.
But
my God. I really want to see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so on board. I want to see this.
You might have seen it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You might have seen it. It's pretty big. It's like on my whole like thigh. But but yeah, I've been like a fan ever since like I was basically a kid. Like my mom showed me Alien and Aliens. Like I must have been like 9 or 10 years old or something when I saw them. Like my mom like let me watch R-rated movies, like just as long as she could pre-screen them first, which I think is the right way to parents when it comes to watching movies. And they freaked me out, you know, but I still love them, and I've been a horror fan ever since, basically.
Yeah, I remember watching Alien. I don't think I've seen Alien since I was a kid.
Oh, okay.
Because watching it that first time, so many of these moments, like obviously I remember the big diners, like the dinner scene. I remember them seeing the pods for the first time. I remember the escape capsule, but a lot of the in between stuff I don't remember at all. So rewatching it, I was like, oh, yeah, no shit.
I don't even know how many times I've seen these movies. Like the first two. I've seen Aliens 100 times. I don't know. I would watch it all the time when I was a kid. It would always be on TV too. So like,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I've seen both movies, and I had like all the special edition DVDs and everything. And like, yeah, I was a fan.
So you have like all of the insider knowledge for us.
Yeah, I watched all those things. Unfortunately, I lost the DVDs, so I couldn't rewatch the special features, but whatever.
I don't think I really watched these when I was a kid, I want to say, because like my household was like, no horror, no, like, you know, that's the devil.
Oh no,
then,
really? Oh, I'm sorry.
And then oh well, Prometheus just has like giant religious subtext. Awesome. I'm here for this. But I did watch them like, you know, as soon as I moved out. I was super rebellious and I was like, oh, this is cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I never watched like any of the other films like Resurrection or 3 or Prometheus or anything until this year. And I was like, because we're in the pandemic, whatever. Yeah. And so I like got really into it and I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, even though, like you were saying, Eric, there's so many beats in this where it's like, I know what's going to happen here, mostly because like these films are so ingrained in like the pop culture ethos that it's like,
there's no surprises anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, which is great because I'm a little scaredy baby, as we talked about on the pod before. So like, it's just like, okay, like if there's a scary moment, I will totally like put my hands over my eyes and like, just like look through like, you know, just like But no, this was a treat. I'm really excited to talk about these.
Yes.
Same. Yeah. I mean, it definitely, like you were saying, that at least the first one, it really did set a precedent for a lot of horror. I mean,
it did.
It's one of those what would be considered like a godfather of the genre.
Yeah.
And a larger conversation as opposed to like B-movie stuff, but like fucking
and, like,
scary space.
Horror.
Yeah, when it comes to sci-fi
right?
horror, it really changed that direction, especially because like aliens in movies before weren't like the xenomorph. You know what I mean? They were like more human-like, sentient, like they could communicate with you, all this stuff. But like the scariest thing about the xenomorph is that it's just like a space bug. It's a space parasite that lays eggs in you. And nobody ever had that idea before.
And at that time, how for that to be the
scary.
First instance of something like this, it's terrifying.
It's terrifying.
It's so terrifying. Like, I mean, the Geiger designs, like crazy, so gorgeous.
Yes.
Like the face hugger and like the xenomorph itself. I mean, even the sets, it's a really scary.
It's a beautiful movie.
It's beautiful, but
beautiful and terrifying.
And like Giger, he was brought on, and like you have to watch the special features from the Alien. I just know them from the Alien DVD that I had, but like they interview Giger in so many of these, special features, and he is just like the most awesome person ever. Have you ever like seen what he looks like or anything like that?
No, I don't think I have.
He is like, do you remember that SNL skit with Mike Myers called Dieter?
He looks like Dieter?
Kind of. I think he is partly probably based a little bit of Dieter on Giger because
awkward German.
Pretty much. He's a Swiss German artist. And
I see exactly what you're talking about. I just Googled him.
And he shows up to set and he's wearing like all black and turtleneck and like black pants, and he's got like this hot AF like goth girlfriend with him. You know what I mean? And
the vibe, the whole vibe.
And he's just like, yeah, we're going to do this like in all this German accent, like, you know what I mean? It's like, and his art is very sexual, and it's all black and gray art. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't do any color. And there were two different artists who were designing, Giger was in charge of the alien world, and there was another artist. I think he worked on Star Wars. Don't quote me on that, but he might have. Who was doing like all the human made stuff. And Ridley Scott had to be like, you got to make things look less like penises and vaginas. You just have to.
I mean, we'll go into
still very pervasive in everything. But
we'll go into it more. But I mean, even the alien structural head
exactly, and the original design
is so phallic.
The original design had like a mushroom tip on it, like had like the knob.
Okay,
congrats.
So I felt like
amazing.
Like, you gotta make it look less like a penis. You have to make it look less like a penis.
I wonder if they like revamped some of those designs or like brought some of those elements back for Prometheus, because there were some points where I was like, that's totally a vagina. That is 100, like the first little alien that comes up. I was like, that's a penis.
Yeah,
that's totally a dick.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, like, it all is kind of like, they're parasites and it's like reproduction. So it makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, that they would have like very sexual looking organs and parts to them. So like, it just adds to the kind of creepiness of the creature in a way. I don't know.
Oh yeah. It adds to sort of, it makes something that's just generally insidious feel more lascivious. Like it feels like scarier because there is sort of a constant sexual connotation to everything visually.
Yeah.
That I feel like it amps the fear even more. Yeah. Let's jump into the first one.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, let's do it. After receiving a potential distress signal from a nearby planet, the cargo ship Nostromo diverts its course and wakes its 7-member crew. After investigating the crash site of an unknown airship, Executive Officer Kane is attacked by a bony insectoid and is brought back to the Nostromo. Warrant Officer Ripley insists on not bringing the alien life into the ship for fear of contamination, but Science Officer Ash ignores her pleas and lets them enter. Big mistake. After discovering the creature bleeds acid and disappearing from Kane's base, Kane wakes up good as new. JK, at dinner, baby Giger alien enters the chat by way of Kane's ribcage.
The plan is set. Find the itty-bitty alien, launch them out of the airlock, and fly home like nothing happened. Uh-oh, the alien is humongous and soaking wet from hunger. One by one, the alien picks off the crew members until the last remaining crew member, Ripley, initiates the self-destruct of the Nostromo and narrowly escapes in her escape pod. As she and her cat Jonesy settle in for the long hibernation sleep home, oh no, the alien escaped with them. JK, she blasted it through the airlock. Screams are scrum, but since it's space, nary a scream is heard.
In space, no one can hear you scream.
It's honestly one of the coolest tags.
It is.
How
Whoever thought of that is so like. Ugh, I could never think of that.
I remember as a kid seeing like the VHS that my dad had of it, just seeing the cover of it with that tag. I was like, this is the scariest fucking thing I've ever seen. This is truly just the cover with the green like sort of silhouette halo.
And
I was
egg
like,
on it. Yeah,
this is fucked. I hate this. I'm gonna cry forever. I love Alien. I think it's such an incredible like a way of storytelling, but also a pretty feminist structured story for the most part, just in the way that
it's extremely feminist.
The way that they frame Ripley's character and like pit all of these sort of toxic male presences around her and make them look foolish sort of based on the way that she's presented in the story. I'm like, this is really good.
Part of the reason that she is presented that way too is because Ripley was written originally as a male character. So all of the characters on this were written as men, but the screenwriters made a note that said, quote, "The crew is unisex and all parts are interchangeable for men or women." And then like the whole reason that they decided to make Ripley a woman was because the studio was like, oh, we'll get a lot of points if we do this. If we make her a woman, we'll do that. So part of the reason she's so strong is because she was written as a man, which is cool. And, like, because I feel like Sigourney Weaver does such like a great job of embodying that. And I love that she doesn't even necessarily become the main character until 45 minutes into the movie.
One of the things I love about the movie is that when you first watch it, you don't know who the main character is going to be. Like everybody's just very, like you said, it's very unisex, very uniform. Everybody's very, you know what I mean? Like they're part of a crew.
There's sort of a visual representation that makes me think that Ash is going to be the lead, at least initially. And then they kind of veer away and it becomes the Ripley show later on, which I mean, again, I'm obsessed with. But like you're saying, it being a crew and an intentional, like, this is a group thing, and that diverting from what's expected at that dinner scene when it's like, hey, he's fucked, we're fucked.
Yeah.
Party time. Like, I don't know what else to do.
And I know they wanted to have the aesthetic of truckers in space. Like, they're not like...
Really?
Did you hear that?
No.
Yeah, it was like, they're just basically operating a ship to transport a bunch of ore. I can't remember, like some sort of mineral, some sort of like whatever across... whatever the galaxy or wherever they're going. And that's like their main job. They're just on the crew basically of like a supply ship. And the only reason they like got woken up was because of a distress signal or whatever. So they're not like scientists they're just like operating a ship.
And that's one of the things I really liked about it too, is these people aren't scientists. They're not fucking trained for this. And
exactly.
So like that makes sense why they,
There's a big difference between Prometheus and this movie too.
Yeah, because most of my notes for Prometheus are just like, where's the PPE? Where is all like how did they not notice that there's life underneath their feet? There's literally worms hanging out.
Oh my God. It's so infuriating.
I like the notion of working class astronauts. That's very funny. That's very interesting to me. Just like, lower middle class, whatever, just doing it.
They're blue collar workers.
Blue collar astronauts. Yeah.
I also love that Ripley is like a union queen when she like goes down. Like she's like, okay, cool. I'm gonna go talk to them. Like no problem. They're like, yeah, whatever. And they're like, look, we want our cut. And she's like, look, by law, you have to do this. Like I was a shop steward before. And so like she went down there and she was like, cool, this is actually what's laid down in the law. So here are your rights. Here is this. And I was like, I see you. I love you.
She's literally the coolest character.
Yeah. And she was like the only one who was like, hey, don't let him on board. It's going to contaminate everything. And she, nobody listens to her.
Yeah, they like actively ignored her, and Ash just opened the door. And then later he's like, well, I was answering to command. He's like, no, you understand that when they're off the ship, I'm in command and you still chose to ignore me.
She was the one in command. That's a mutiny.
She consistently proves that she's like the best and most qualified without being an asshole or without like having to like
she's very firm, but
without having to like resort to like those traditional power structures and power plays that we see in like, you know, a lot of male spaces. So like it's cool like thinking of like how just her being a woman, even though she was written as a man, like completely changes this whole dynamic. You know, you can be firm without being a total dick.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
I also like that she questions literally everyone and everything around her. Like she questions Mother when, you know, she's like, oh, she hasn't finished deciphering the transmission. I got it. Right. And then she also questions Ash like the whole time. And she's like, look, why are you doing this? Why was this a thing? Right. And
she's also the first to step up in any situation too. Like they're like, okay, who's going to be the one to go in the vent? She's like, I am. Me. Mm-hmm. I'll go up. Like, yeah, just let me go. That's fine. And they're like, no, let's talk about it. She's like, why? Like, I said I'd go. Like, let me just do it. And even again, in the face of all of this constant like gaslighting and adversity, where like she's bringing it up to the other guy about like how she distrusts Ash. She's like, hey, I don't think I trust him. And then his response is, yeah, well, I don't trust anybody. Just like completely diminishing her perspective, completely shutting her down with some literally of zero substance response just to shut her up. And it's like, even through that, she's still just like, yeah, whatever. I do this every day. This sucks. But like, I'm going to at least be consistent, even in spite of all of these shitty people.
Was that Dallas? I can't remember.
Yeah, that's Dallas.
Yeah.
That was Dallas.
Yeah, that was Dallas. Yeah.
Every line out of his mouth was like, basically, I'm just doing this is just my job. Okay. Like all I do is run the ship. I can't do anything. Yeah. I was just like, what do you like? And he has to ask Mother for permission for anything. And I'm just like, oh my God, you suck. Like you are like the worst, like you're the quintessential middle manager.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah. I do want to bring up, there was, so you know the scene when Ash is attacking Ripley with the magazine?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you guys notice the back wall behind when this is happening where it's like the pornographic cutouts? But then above that were cutout pictures of eggs.
Really?
Yes. Like breakfast eggs, like over easy eggs. Like above that. So like in this terrifying moment of like male dominance and male like violence, it's like highlighted by the sexual nature of the visual, but then above that, it's like reiterating this like pregnancy, rebirth, like just procreating visual. It was like, I mean, obviously the whole scenario is super irksome and gross, but like seeing pictures of eggs above like nude women above this like act of violence, it was
while he's like shoving something in her mouth, right? Like
so like a magazine.
It's all of these things like wrapped up in one, which I mean, I think, probably all of that's intentional just to be really fucking jarring. Like,
because
that whole scene is super gross. And like, even when they try to jump on him and he's just like super strong. And I mean, I think this is the first time. Is this the first time they're realizing that he's a android? Because he's bleeding. He's sweating milk.
Yeah.
My favorite.
Yeah. In all
it's Mother's
alien
milk.
movies, they have milk blood. Blood in the robots.
I am obsessed with the milk blood moment, especially in Resurrection with Winona. Very, very, very fun. But yes, the whole milk motif as like the blood, I thought was I loved it. I was gonna also bring up the I feel like a lot of these movies, or at least in the last one we got this, and I think in Blade Runner we also get this, the early computer graphic as like the exposition motif, where there's a whole scene dedicated to somebody sitting in front of a computer typing, this bad thing is happening, the computer responding, yes it is, then them being like, will we survive this, the computer being like, probably not, and then they move past it. I mean, it was in this one, in The Thing, it was very similar, where they're like on the computer like, what's happening here, blah blah blah. I think in Blade Runner, similarly with like the enhanced moments, he's like asking questions and the whole replicant test and all that stuff.
Same thing in The Fly too.
Oh,
in The
right.
Fly,
Yeah.
It's like, what happened? Like, you were combined with the fly's DNA.
Yes.
You're going to die.
It's literally, it's like one of the funniest things for me for these early computing systems to be like the segue or like the exposition scene. Like you can be as vague elsewhere as you need to be, but
exactly.
Then we get a minute with the computer. The computer's like, I know everything, and now you do too. And it's like, cool, we can go to the
even though it's
fucking...
like early, like it's like all in DOS or whatever. Like
yeah, which to some degree, and maybe I mean I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but it makes it more menacing to me. Like an early computing system, the way it's so loud and jarring, like just that ambient and emotionless sound that just is so. I mean, because sound is such a big thing in horror. For it to be a silent room and that just to be like the doom text, the sound of that computer is ingrained in my mind as scary.
Yeah, it is pretty scary.
Even still, for as scary as this movie is, we're like just looking through corridors and there's way too much fog for some reason, and you just hear like a little click clack or like a or like a drip of something, and you're like, oh great, I'm dead, thanks.
Cool.
Cool. I'm just gonna go die now. Bye. You're like, you know what, alien, don't even worry about it. I got it. You can just go do your thing. I don't need to get bitten today. I'm fine. Thank you.
Like, I don't understand how Ripley is such a badass and like the whole time just like keeps her cool. And like you could tell she's scared, but she is calm and she fucking handles all of the shit. And even like she's crying as she was like, you know, trying to like get the ship to not self-destruct and everything. But like no matter what, she still is okay and doesn't give up. And I'm just like, I would probably have been more like Lambert, right? Like
oh my
that's
God.
probably that's where I would be.
My favorite part of the movie is the end when she's like in the escape pod, and she's definitely like, she really conveys how much fear she's in and you can feel it. And I don't blame her, because it's like, she thinks she's in the clear and then all of a sudden it's like aliens in the escape pod. And then she's watching it from the other side of the pod, like, you know how you watch a spider on the wall?
Yeah.
When you want to kill the spider, but the minute you take your eyes off of it, it's going to like move and disappear. So it's like, it's just so scary. But the way she did get rid of the alien was genius. Like she's just the best like female horror movie character, or at least like the first best one.
Well, I mean, even moving forward in the franchise, I mean, the get away from her, you bitch, is such an iconic moment of just like history.
It's so silly. I love it. I laugh every time I hear it.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah,
you know
same.
What I mean? It's like one of those 80s action movie one-liners that is so like amazing.
But it's like her in that full crane suit. The crane suit by itself is just incredible. But her just like swinging her arm, being like, "You get away from her," and you're just like, "Yes, you get away from her. Go away." Yeah. I believe this. But like to your point about that, the acting in that last scene, her again not taking her eyes and like getting into the suit that she has to get into, like constant. It's just like
she's singing, she's
to trembling.
Herself.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
she's
so
trying
scary.
to calm herself down. Yeah.
Because you know exactly where it is, and it's like keeps cutting from her face to the exact spot, and you're just like, this sucks.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm really happy that she put the cat in the bed. Because I'm like, if she hadn't done anything with Jonesy,
yes, for that cat,
she did. Jonesy is safe with Ripley, because even when she got on the thing, it was like, oh yeah, put the kitty to sleep. Like when you get home, it's gonna be great. And then as soon as the alien was there, I was like, where's the cat? What'd she do? What happened? Make sure. And then I remembered, okay, cool. The cat's in the bed. The cat's safe.
Yep.
Good.
Cat's in hypersleep.
When I was doing my research for this, I like one of the things I researched, I was like, what's the cat supposed to represent, right? And and I went down all the theories, and like one of them is that the cat and the xenomorph are in cahoots because Jonesy is at every death scene. And so he's like kind of like leading them. And I was like, this is bananas and wild. And I love that somebody took the time to write this down.
I mean, Jonesy just like watches and is like, I forget the name of the character, but the first one to die by the actual alien, you know what I mean? In the movie, I can't remember. But he's just like watching like, he's getting murdered.
Oh, that whole scene is so good when he walks into the room and like the raindrops are hitting his face and he like you can hear it pitter pattering off his hat, and then you see it on his like it's gorgeous, and then the rustling of the chains. Like I do remember as a kid this whole scene because it scared me so fucking bad.
Yeah.
It's also like a lot of horror movies will languish in the violence of it, and this scene doesn't do any of that. Like it's just you see it, he's scared, alien's like and like tongue mouth out, and then you hear like a brief scream, and then it's just a close up of the cat and it's over. And I remember the fact that it hardly shows anything was even more scary to me as a kid. Like, nope, that's fucked. That's real. I can't do this.
Tension for like 10 minutes on that.
Yeah.
It felt like, like you're sitting there and nothing's happening.
It's very atmospheric. It's all about building tension. Yeah. It's claustrophobic. That's
oh
another
my
thing.
God.
Like anything that's like you're just like in this small space and you only have like so many places that you can go. Like the fact that you don't see the alien too much does make it more mysterious and then therefore makes it more scary.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So like that's another thing like where, and I'll get into it when we get into Prometheus. It's like I kind of like the fact that the alien is mysterious.
Yeah.
Because it does make it more scary.
Oh yeah.
And to me, it's like the backstory to me having this whole thing completely unnecessary.
I feel
you
like
know what I mean?
we also didn't need any of that. We didn't really need to see what happened. Like not seeing what happened with the bodies was also like great because like I know that there's like a 4-hour version of this movie like that Ridley Scott has, right? That hasn't been released. But one of them, like in when Ripley's running away and going to the shuttle.
She sees Dallas, doesn't she?
Yeah. So she sees them cocooned, right? And they ended up cutting it because they felt like it was, it
didn't feel right. Yeah.
It took away from her
good
escape.
flow. Yeah.
Yeah, but like I'm glad that we didn't see any of that because that's also one of the things that makes it so terrifying. In addition to like, it's just that like that mystery and like the way that everything is shot and like the sound design too, because like even from like the very first shot of this film, like the camera's moving around this empty spaceship like it's alive, like there is something alive here, right?
Yeah.
And then throughout the whole film too, like it goes back between moments of stillness and like running and like to me the way that it was shot felt like it wanted to remind you that these are real people and like and like bring you back to the humanity of these people dealing with violence and capitalism and how those intertwine. And then like there's also moments where like all you can hear is like a faint heartbeat, right? And like in those like tense moments like you were saying with like the rain on the hat and stuff.
In that scene for sure.
Yeah.
Well, adding to the element that you were saying where they tried to make it look like the ship was alive. I mean, look at the way the interior of the ship looks. It's like a bunch of like leather ridges. Everything's wet. It kind of it makes you look like you're inside like an intestine because it's so small. Everything's ridged. And it's like these endless like corridors that sort of weave back and forth from one another. I mean, the only time where that isn't the case is like the dining hall or the birthing room where they wake up from hypersleep or whatever.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And I think the echoing of the design of the xenomorph itself with the interior of the ship adds an element of sinisterness just because it feels inescapable, right? Like, not only is it looks like you're inside this endless body, but it could potentially be the body of the thing you're afraid of the most, which is this alien.
Yeah.
Possibly, right? Oh, it's so gross.
Like, going along with like that and like, the alien being a metaphor for like rape and trauma and violence and stuff, right? Like just like I couldn't help but think about the alien as like a metaphor for trauma, especially in the scene that we were talking about earlier where Ripley is like in the escape pod watching it while she's like, putting on the spacesuit and stuff. Like the alien is born in like, I want to go back to the planet really quick. The planet itself is an incredibly violent area, right? Where the weather is absolutely like terrifying and the rocks are just completely jagged to the point to where the ship tries to land and it fucking breaks because it's such like an awful planet, right? And then like and then
no, like, I was gonna say you can say Bakersfield, it's fine.
Oh my god. Oh
I'm
my
just
god,
kidding.
can I? But yeah, so it's like it's born out of violence and then it like there's like no consent for it and then it literally like destroys you like from the inside out and changes and grows over time, right? So the alien starts as the face hugger, right? And then it goes to the chest burster and then it goes to the xenomorph and every time it's just more and more terrifying and it grows bigger and bigger. And even when like the way that trauma works, right, is like even when you think you've found a safe place to hide, it'll come back when you least expect it, right? And like so for me that final scene with Ripley especially where she's like cool, she finally lets down her hair, she like feels safe, and then to find it there, it was just so hard, and she got it out, and it's still, even after being shot with a fucking harpoon and blown out into space, like it's still trying to
get back in. Yeah.
Right. And like, you know, and they mention it, you know, that you can never kill it, right? Like these beings can't be killed. All you can do is just distance yourself from it, right? And so that's why, like at the end, you know, she like nukes it with the thruster, right? And then it's supposed to be dead, but we know that it's not. We know that it just lives on, because they have that line earlier that talks about how it always evolves to adapt to its climate, right?
Yeah. So it's just going to live in space until
literally all she can do is that will always exist, and that will always be there, and all she can do is just distance herself from it. You know, and so like in that moment, you know, she's using these coping skills where she's putting on her armor, she's, you know, gearing up to face this trauma, and she's, you know, singing a song, you know, like "You're My Lucky Star," and, you know, all these things that you learn in therapy. Hi. But so for me, like watching that this time around was like, oh, I like this a lot more now.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't agree more with like, just, I mean, on top of what we were discussing earlier about like the phallic visuals, and so this sort of character kind of being like this big scary phallus that's like running around abusing all of these characters, for that to be sort of the running theme as far as like reiterative trauma or the reintroduction of trauma when you feel like you've gotten to a better place or another level. It's great. I mean, it's it adds,
also,
it amplifies
cyclical violence is all I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
It just makes it goes from just like sort of a body horror to a mental horror sort of situation.
Yeah.
Because of that element.
I wonder if Giger had that in mind when he was designing it, as like, oh, this giant phallus, like it being like intimidating in that way or threatening in that way.
Oh, probably.
Like I don't know if that was like in his head or if he, you know,
it's like a happy accident.
Happy accidents.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I'm wondering.
It was just funny. Because like once again, I'm going back to those special features or whatever with Giger, but like he's a big caricature of like in himself, you know what I mean? And he like embraces it, but I don't think he takes it too seriously, because there's literally like a scene where he's being interviewed and oh my God, it's so funny. He is sitting like in a dark room, obviously, black turtleneck. He's holding a naked cat, like a Sphinx cat, petting it. And he's saying stuff like, oh no, I don't, they were asking like, do you ever go out in the daylight? And he's like, no, I much prefer the dark. I don't like the like stuff like that. But then he's like talking about like the sexual nature of his art. But then he just is like, yeah, it looks like a penis. You know, like he's like giggling about it. And it's really funny. Like he doesn't take it like, I don't know if it's just funny to him. It probably is multiple layers. Things can be like, you know, amusing and also have like, you know, behind it. But like, he's just amazing. Like, I love him so much.
I mean, also just being in these like interviews with like very serious people and just saying penis, you know, like
oh, it looks very sexual. Yeah.
What a vibe. Yeah, because again, you can like, I'm sure he has some like heavy emotional symbolism in some of his art, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, it's a wiener.
Yeah, it's a wiener.
It is a wiener.
Yeah.
I wonder. I wonder too, just in general, as far as like that element of it, sort of like that phallic violence motif that is sort of perpetuated through the movie, if it would have worked in the same way with like, say, if Ripley was cast as a man, or if it was an all-male cast, because that element could have been read as a fear of homosexuality idea, right? If it was an all-male cast and there was this phallic running around killing them, it could have been, you know what I mean? But I mean, because the story is so centered on Ripley, I do like the reading more as what we've just discussed, right?
Yeah.
But I honestly didn't even think about his head looking like that until you brought it up earlier.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then not only his head looking like that, but then the double mouth, like the inside mouth.
The tentacle too.
The
tail or whatever.
Like when the tail like goes to like penetrate Ripley. Like it's
yes.
Did you guys know, you might know, Steph, but Lambert is actually trans.
Oh no, I didn't hear that.
So Ridley Scott was like super famous for not really giving the actors a lot to go with, like, so just like, yeah, no, go for it. And then when they would ask him for like for more information, like he would give them like a dossier or something, or give them a bio. And Lambert's was that she was born male, but at a young age her parents decided to change her gender to female. And I didn't read that until afterwards, but now I'm also wondering, like, how would that have changed my perspective on this and on her? I mean, she's not in it a lot, but like every time we see it, like, she's afraid, you know, she's terrified, you know. And then like talking about violence and trauma and all of that, like the next time I watch it, I want to keep that like in the back of my mind and like, you know, focus on them a little bit more, because that is how this actor played the character, which, you know, is another interesting take.
Just from like a story perspective, I do like that notion, in the sense that, I mean, even if she isn't like canonically trans within the story, but just like the crew of what would be considered like the final girls in this movie is all of the non-cis straight white men.
Yeah, that's very true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because
like,
it's Lambert and I can't remember the
Lambert,
black
Parker,
guys.
Lambert, Parker, and Ripley.
Parker?
Yeah, it's Parker.
And so for me, I like seeing that I was just like, oh, I really like that, because more often than not, I mean, most horror movies, especially of the time, if there was sort of a token character of color, they more often than not were the first act a death. And you're like,
that's
okay,
always
great.
Cool. Always been like a joke in horror, you know.
Yeah,
it's like,
100%. So I like that was the exact opposite in this movie.
For sure.
Same.
But it's just a bunch of white dudes making really dumb decisions because they have like this blind confidence. You know what I mean?
Truly.
It's just like that's
they're constantly,
that's the problem with a lot of leadership really in general. Yeah.
Because even after being constantly presented with the truth, or like the fact of the matter is constantly being presented to them by Ripley at every moment, where it's like, don't do that or we're going to die. We're going to do it anyways. Okay. Hey, I distrust this character. This character is probably bad. They're acting evil. You're stupid. Shut up. Like all of these moments, and then it's, I mean, all of those characters just driven by that blind confidence is
blind
sort of what just kills them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I love. I love that is ultimately the reason they die. Is that blind straight cis male confidence, straight white cis male confidence of just going through, just like, yeah, whatever, it's like, all gonna work out.
I don't know the term for, there is a word for it. It's like unsubstantiated confidence. What's the word? I guess that makes sense though. Yeah, exactly.
That sounds great.
Like confidence for no reason. Like you shouldn't be confident, but you are, just because you're
a man. Yes.
Can we talk about capitalism in this movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
And in Aliens as well.
Yeah.
That comes up in Aliens more than this movie, I think.
I think it's super interesting because this is like kind of like capitalism light, right? So like, you know, we've already covered, it's like 7 like truckers essentially in hypersleep. Like they're like traveling for like 2 years or something with 20 million pounds of like mineral ore. So just these 7 people, right, are like responsible for all of this. But like then capitalism is willing to like abandon that to go for the alien, who it considers like this perfect organism because it cannot be killed, and it admires, what's the word, like Ash says he admires its purity because it's unclouded by conscience or delusions of morality. And I'm like, that is such a capitalist that is such a capitalist line, and I love this.
Yeah, but the mother was like, oh well, the main objective for this is to bring back the specimen alive regardless of the crew, you know. That's like literally truly capitalistic. And then even after, you know, so Ripley is the sole survivor, she nukes the ship full of the 70 whatever million pounds of ore. And in Aliens, in the second one, the first thing they do is pretty much take her on trial for it, like, why did you destroy the ship? And then they like kind of ruin her life after that. They're like, they took away her pilot's license. She like, just because she's like, look, there was an alien killing everybody. We don't care. You destroyed our property. Like, that's it.
Your life, again, to just reiterate, your life does not matter. Your labor is what matters. And that's it. And you destroyed our income essentially for whatever purpose. So,
and then literally in all of these movies, they just use her in Alien 1 through 4, right? Like she can't escape capitalism even in death. And yeah, like just in this one specifically, I think it's really interesting that like capitalism is being led by the machines, right? By Mother and by Ash.
Yeah.
And even like the one human that's kind of like, you know, the middle manager guy, Dallas. That's
Dallas,
yeah. He has like these moments of humanity, right, that we don't see from Mother or Ash. It's really interesting that like, you know, capitalism is a machine, right? And we're part of it and we interact with it. But like true capitalism is embodied by literal machines in this film.
Oh, yeah. I feel, again, as an adult, like watching this, I feel like there is so much being said that I completely missed as a kid. You know what I mean? And the capitalism narrative is one of them. But yeah, I think like overall as just a general conversation about capitalism, and I mean even in Prometheus, the notion of capital being more important than life or discovery or what have you, which we'll get into momentarily. But I like that this movie really does set a precedent for tone for it is a groundbreaking movie. It's really fucking good. It's a really good and important movie.
Yeah, it was revolutionary at its time. Yeah. And I mean
still today it holds up. Like
it does.
Like you're saying, like even the special effects and everything, even like the pacing, and like it's such a treat to go back and watch like these kind of films because
it's almost 50 years old. Yeah.
It's so incredible. Wild? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, no, 79. I mean, it's like 42 years. I can't do math. 42 years old, but it will be 50. Like, and it'll still be hold up better than some movies today, like in terms of special effects, you know?
Like, and also just how fucking cool is Sigourney Weaver? Just, I mean, I know we've like talked so much about how great Ripley is as a character, but Sigourney Weaver as an actor.
Yeah, there would be there's no other Ripley. Nobody could be Ripley.
No.
She's Ripley.
She's Ripley.
She's
Believe
Ripley.
It or not, she's Ripley.
She had never been in a movie before this. She was only, she was a stage actress
really?
before. This was her first movie.
Oh, shit.
She only did some stage work before this, and that was it. So.
God. I mean.
And I love, like.
When I was watching this, I was thinking, I was like, I wonder what life was like for Sigourney Weaver at this time. Like. Because again, like being such a pivotal moment in cinema and also being the lead character, like of this movie, like for somebody who'd again never done a single movie, I'm like, I wonder what those 2 years.
Yeah, she must have had a bomb ass audition. She must have crushed that audition, you know. But also, it's like this was like we talked about before, one of the first like very feminist horror movies, and I mean, horror is considered like, I don't know by everybody, but I've read multiple articles where it's like the most feminist genre of all genres of film. And I think it started with this movie, like, and of course, like there's movies in the 80s, like, you know, those teen slasher movies where it's all about like, you know, tits and, you know, just like, you know what I mean? But nowadays it's like most horror movies have female leads or just like female characters that are interesting and very like, it kind of started with this one. And it's also like the thing I like about Alien and Aliens and all pretty much the Alien movies is that they all pretty much have female lead characters. And it's not like that. I get really like annoyed with that, like Hollywood feminism kind of like.
You're on the right podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, like girl boss feminism.
Exactly. And it's like, oh, like in Marvel or whatever, it's like, look, women are badass. Look, you know, like, look at me. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just so seamless. It's so seamless. She's just a badass. You know what I mean? Gender isn't an issue, really. She's just awesome.
It's not it's not a Target T-shirt that says "Women are power" or "Women equal power."
Exactly.
So
it's not self-congratulatory in any way.
Exactly.
It doesn't go out of its way to remind us that she's a woman, or it also doesn't go out of its way to try to be like groundbreaking or to try to teach us anything, where she's just accepted for being a woman. And, you know, she's not challenged because of her gender or anything. She's like she is just a person on the crew that people are disrespecting, and it has nothing to do with her being a woman.
Maybe it does though. I don't know. Like maybe they don't take her seriously because
they just don't take anybody seriously.
Like, I guess maybe, I don't know.
Because like Brett and Parker, right? Their gripe is just that they're worried about getting paid and that nobody cares about them, right? And then the only other person that like disobeys her or like tries to challenge her is Ash, and that just has to do with the fact that she's asking too many questions and he's pissed.
True.
But it's never you're a woman and you are the weaker sex. Like her authority, like her as a woman is not on display. She just is a person. And that's what's really good about like good sci-fi. It doesn't go out of its way, and good, or just good storytelling in general, it doesn't go out of its way to have to over feminize the character or to be like,
very true.
See, I'm a woman, I can do this too,
Exactly.
It doesn't, like, because a lot of the time like that just feels self-congratulatory and that feels repressive, because like, look, we get it, everybody is equal. Why are you still trying to show us that like these worlds still exist, especially like 200 years in the future? Like it really pisses me off when that exists in sci-fi. But so I don't think that that's ever on display here in the way that it is in 95% of other movies. You're right.
Yes.
I mean, I will only argue the Dallas moment because I do think that was misogyny. In like
it seemed like it, like he's just like he rolls his eyes, like he's like that one's very clear. She even like closes the door so he stops walking away from her, like he's like she's like, listen to me, stop walking away, and he's like rolling his eyes. I don't want to hear it. Like
the Ash moment 100% was like, oh, I don't want you finding out what I'm doing.
And he's a robot. He's a robot.
He
has internalized misogyny.
Yeah. I mean, they could embed that in AI.
They could embed it. Yeah, they could program that. You could do anything. It's a robot.
Shitty men are creating a system of misogyny in AI.
They could like
for
put
sure.
it in his programming. Women, they're emotional. Like just everything they say, just kind of be like, well, they're emotional. Some asshole wrote that code. Jesus Christ, that's so silly. But yeah, I think the Ash moment 100% is just like he doesn't want to get caught. But Dallas is just an asshole who's like, oh, I hate that this woman is in charge of me to some degree. I hate that she's talking to me.
Oh, I hear what you're saying. Yeah. I think that he's just kind of like that with everybody. Like he disregards everybody and he doesn't give a shit about anybody. The only person that he shows any sort of respect to is Ash. And that's only because of Mother, right? That's because like that's his direction. But like I think in general, he's just kind of a loner because he's the company man, right? And so he can't.
And we haven't seen his interactions with other people really. So
you know what, you're totally right. I think he just generally is an asshole.
He's just an asshole.
It is just hard as a viewer to disassociate the internalized misogyny of a lot of these sort of male characters in almost any movie. So a moment where he's making Ripley shut up, I'm like, oh fuck this asshole misogynist. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like I feel like if the roles were switched, he would still act the same way. Like let's say if the person that got the face hugger, right? If that person and Ripley were switched, I feel like he would have like their genders are switched. I feel like he would have had the exact same reaction because
But it's a crew member.
You're right, Eric, because like there is so much internalized misogyny, and that is such a thing that we see all the fucking time that even without context, like our brain automatically goes there because that's the context. That's our own internalized misogyny, right?
Yeah.
Like, like being projected onto this film.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you guys want to talk about Prometheus?
Yeah, sure. Let's burn it.
Okay. 4 years after the discovery of a star map in a Scottish cave, archaeologists Elizabeth Shaw and Charlie Holloway set forth on the Prometheus vessel in a Highland Industries-sponsored mission to Moon LV-223. Accompanied by various archaeologists, linguists, and scientists, as well as resident android David and mission director Meredith Vickers, they land on this new planet. What's this? They discover a dome structure that houses alien corpses and VQ'd historic movie projectors? As the storm approaches, they take an alien head, David steals a poison pod, and they head back to the ship. Oh no, 2 of the archaeologists haven't made it back and are trapped in the big dome. Hope they don't get gulped by the local wildlife. JK, they do.
After analyzing the head, they discover that it matches human DNA, meaning they found their creators. Meanwhile, David poisons Crawford with some of the alien juice he stole and subsequently impregnates Holloway, and they collectively go on a rescue mission for the missing crew. What? Peter Weyland is actually not dead and using David to quietly sabotage the mission so he could ask his makers to give him more life? And what else? The dome houses the ship with literal death that's aimed at Earth and is being piloted by said creator who hates humankind. And now Prometheus must be sacrificed by crashing into the alien ship to ensure the safety of humankind back on Earth? Yes. Also, there is some cesarean alien birthing, face hugging, and enlivening of the Giger alien that we all know and love. Screams are scrum, but since it's space, nary a scream is heard.
Okay, so Prometheus. General vibes.
This whole thing is just science versus religion, and I have so many questions for God. And why does God hate thee? And why did you abandon us?
Yeah.
I want to go on the record as saying one of my least favorite tropes in a lot of science fiction is science versus religion.
Yeah.
Because I also took a science fiction literature class, and like basically everything that we read came down to this question, especially in early science fiction, of science versus religion. So this whole thing just felt very fucking old to me because it didn't feel like it was doing anything new.
Yeah.
And the only interesting part of this whole movie for me was David.
I guess so. Yeah.
See,
David is the in the Bible, isn't he the like the destructor kind of as well?
God.
I vaguely remember that, but
I
I'm
forgot
not sure.
even that's biblical. God damn
yeah.
it.
So like the angel David. So
yeah, that's right.
It's all and
well,
I thought. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you had mentioned something about Ridley Scott being like a born-again Christian.
I was wrong about that.
I don't. But you could have honestly fooled me with this movie.
Yes.
to some degree, at least.
It is. I mean, obviously, it is extremely biblical. It doesn't really. It talks about our engineers or whatever, but it doesn't say where the engineers come from. And then at the end, they're like, "Well, where did they come from?" And then they're going to go find that out. Like it's a never-ending search for where we came from, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, is it really like, I mean, it's worth it to go and try to find out, like, you know, answer these questions about where we came from, but it's just, they still didn't even find the answer. You know what I mean?
Ridley Scott is on the record as saying how he considered including a plot point revealing that Jesus was an engineer.
I did read that.
And that the crucifixion is what caused the engineers to turn on humanity, because they also, but he left it as like subtext because like the disaster that destroyed the engineers happened 2,000 years ago.
Yep.
Which like also lines up with the crucifixion of Jesus, if you believe in that. And then like there's also like when you look at it, there's like, you know, Shaw's unshakable belief in God, the virgin alien birth. This all also takes place during Christmas, right? So there's so many things and so many parallels. And then like all of my notes for the characters too are like David is like the absence of faith and a soul, and like Shaw is obviously the true believer. And also there's a lot to say about fucking reproductive bullshit here, and men wanting to control women's bodies and abortion and all of that. So I'm excited to get into that. But yeah, this was all intentional.
I would have fucking screamed if he had left that in. I would have been so excited. That would have been so fucking funny.
I would have loved it.
If there was a scene of one of these engineers being crucified, I would have I honestly 25 out of 10 would have been obsessed. Cult favorite.
Really?
Are you? I would, because to me that's like this movie on just like a base level. I do like this movie. I do think it's kind of silly at times. That's my own thing. But because to me, doubling down on this concept of like science versus religion, or sort of like faith versus evidence, you know, that whole conversation that is like the crux of this movie. If that were to have then been compounded with a literal, oh no, Jesus was one of these characters seen, I'm like, okay, this movie's canonically gay. Sorry. This movie's gay now. That's just it. Like it's too much. It's off the rails. Somebody fucking put it in a museum. It's done. We got it. We did it. Because that
would have been crazy. That would have been a crazy thing to add to this movie. Like, could you imagine
if Jesus was canonically a part of the alien universe?
And the alien, oh my god, no.
And Jesus was an alien. Like, how amazing! I'm mad that this movie doesn't have that. How fucking cool would that have been? Are you kidding me? That would have been the fucking coolest thing in the world.
I think it would have made it, more interesting. But I don't know. To me, like, I'm just like I'm so like atheistic that it would just be so silly. Like, it's just too silly.
But also shitting on faith even more with that. So I'm just like, ooh, that's cute. Like, okay, you want to go meet your God. Your God fucking hates you.
Yeah.
Like, also, I mean, I do kind of like that idea.
Same. And that was that's one of the parts that I liked the most, was like, because the general conversation of it was like this blind faith of hers versus this sort of like evidence-based, what is being represented as like soulless science in this capacity of just like, we must meet them, we must know the true meaning of life. And she's like, well, I believe in God, whatever. Despite if this is like what would be considered our engineers or the creators, what have you, she still believes in this faith. I do like that when they get there, this God character is like, oh, fuck this. Yeah. Head chop. Just throw. I'm trying to get the fuck out of here so I can go kill the rest of you. And you're like, wait, God, stop.
You were a failed experiment, basically. Yeah. I mean, that's basically...
It's, you're still alive? Yeah. Shit, let me go finish this. And you're like, wait, what? No, go back to sleep. Go back to bed. Shh,
and I like that all of this was like based on, like, this whole film is based on her inference in the subtext of what these cave paintings mean and what of these, like, stone tablets and things like that. Like, oh, they want us to come find them. Wow, what a fucking jump, like, okay, like, that's what that means. That's like,
but it's also just such a cliche in these kind of movies too. It's like, look, in all these cave paintings, there's one in Peru, there's one in Egypt, there's one in India. You know what I mean? Like, it's like all the same thing. I don't know. There's a lot of action sci-fi movie cliches in this movie that make me laugh a lot. And that's definitely one of them. It's like, okay, so then that means we got to go find some sort of whatever, like, on the other side of the galaxy.
So I did watch before watching this. Eric had pointed out that there were like some short films that they made with the movie.
Oh, okay.
I watched a couple of them. One was like the introduction to David as a character, which was kind of terrifying because there is a scene where like it's supposed to be like a product commercial for the David model, and he's kind of talking about like who he is as a product and what have you. And it's a scene where he's staring directly at the camera, full tears are streaming down his face, and the narrator kind of just asks him like, "How does this make you feel?" And he says, "I can't." Aww. But he's literally crying, but his face is showing no emotion apart from the tears. It's terrifying. It's so dissociative and fucked up. So for me, I was like, ooh, that's a really cool like introduction to this like obviously insidious character. But then there's another one. It's supposed to be a TED Talk with Wayland in 2023 of him talking about like the development of Wayland Industries and It's a really nice, like, he talks about that scene in Lawrence of Arabia that David's watching where he like puts out the fire, and it's like this whole, it adds to the element and conversation of like capitalism and sort of ego-driven greed as a way to like try to find a sort of godlike status through money and through privilege. And for that reason, going into the movie, I was like, ooh, that to me, it changed the context of it is, what is it? Wayland, right?
Yeah, Wayland. Mm-hmm.
It changes the context of him kind of showing up again at the end. Because the first time I watched this, I remember being like, wait, why is he back? Like, why? Yeah. Like, why? I don't like it.
He wants to be a god, basically. He wants to be like them. He wants to... And of course, it's like, oh, I just want to continue to be like he wants to continue power. That's basically because he has power through capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? By being this ultra rich, and he just wants to continue. He wants to be like, you know what I mean? And he thinks the engineers are going to give it to him. And he's like, fuck you.
Yeah, also
I'm gonna kill you instead. Because you guys are failed. You failed. Yeah.
The level of ego, knowing nothing about this other entity, these other beings, and being like,
thinking that, they're gonna love me or whatever, they're gonna help me.
But I'm me, so they'll help me. Who are you? Who the
fuck
are you?
Exactly.
Like, it's entirely
they don't know
driven.
Who you are.
Yeah, and so I love that the moment that he's just like, no, they're gonna tell me how to live forever, and the guy's like, okay, like, nope, get out of my face.
I do have to say that was pretty badass. I really like that scene where that was like, okay, we're just gonna kill you. That was satisfying. It was very satisfying.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that goes back to like context can really change everything when it comes to films. Like I feel like I probably would have liked this a little bit more like had I seen those things. So I didn't know they existed. So now I'm gonna go watch those.
It's worth watching. Yeah, 100%. I mean, again, like I do think that there should have been more, or like. Even with that, like, it was more satisfying watching that short film, but I didn't need any of the Wayland shit. I'm like, honestly, you already had a lot of content that you needed to resolve. Mm-hmm. Bringing him back as a plot point wasn't necessarily needed.
Yeah.
You already had a lot of shit that you're trying to, like, wrap up.
I feel like a lot of this movie could have been, because, like, I don't know if you've watched Covenant too, but I watched Covenant and I found David, because David is in Covenant. I found that so much more interesting than this, because like those two, this and Covenant, could have been one movie.
Oh yeah.
Because then we see that, David creates like, perfects the alien and, like, so then that gives you more context going into Alien and because I've seen those, going into Alien and knowing that Ash is, who he is, and seeing Ripley up against, the xenomorph and everything, I was like, it was already satisfying the first time I watched it, but now there's just a little bit more context to make Ash a little bit more sinister and to make Mother a little bit more sinister and stuff,
Yeah.
Like I like,
so, yeah. I to me, like I said before, the thing that made the alien so scary to me was its mystery. So I thought like the fact that it had like this whole weird backstory with Covenant with Prometheus and Covenant, like, maybe it's just like me being, I just want to see an alien movie where like it's just more of like the alien like creeping around a ship and being scary. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, totally.
And the fact that you don't know its origin, the fact that it's just like this weird space bug. Like, I don't know. I think that the whole origin story behind it is just kind of, to me, I feel like it's overthought. It's like trying to be cerebral in a way, you know what I mean? But in a way, it's also like just another sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I'm just like being too hard on it.
No, I think that's super valid.
Yeah.
But yeah, especially with all the religious undertones, it just kind of makes, I don't know.
Yeah. It was a little bit too forced. Like, I want to go into some of the lines that were written.
It's very like blunt,
Yes. But I also completely agree with you on the sense of like, when there is part of what makes horror and what makes the scary thing scary is the unknown. It's the what if. It's the constant questioning and like barely seeing it. Like when in a movie where there's a monster and you get glimpses of silhouettes, but you never see what it is. Fuck me up. I'm terrified.
Exactly. I don't consider Prometheus and Covenant to be horror movies.
No, they're more just sci-fi.
So, and like Alien and Aliens, like they're like, Alien is definitely like horror sci-fi. Aliens is kind of like action horror sci-fi.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I don't like scary things. I like context.
So you probably like this. I'm a horror. Yeah.
I have OCD and I like all of the information and I like knowing all of the things.
Yeah.
So if I had just watched Alien and Aliens, cool, like fuck me up, I'm good with this forever. And then so the only thing to me that was really satisfying about the prequels, right, was just there's a little bit more context. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Is it necessary? Absolutely not. But I found the overtness of like when sci-fi is so overt about, science versus religion, about, it just really leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
And, it's like, okay,
I think that's like how I felt too. It's just like, ugh.
and Christianity, like it's always Christianity.
Exactly. It's nothing else.
And so like even when it's like a critique or like maybe your God doesn't love you, like to me that's so old. Like that is so that's so played out, and it's like it's almost never done in a really interesting way. Like sure, maybe movies 50 years ago that would have been like groundbreaking and everything, but for this it was just like, okay, I get it, but then like, looking at, even within that, like David is the machine and the machines like are the ones that are going to bring death upon Earth, right? One way or another, through either reviving the engineers or through making these aliens and then having the Wayland Company years in the future come back to grab the alien because they want that, right? So like, then that's like, like this subtext of like, organic life versus synthetic life, which to me, that's a much more interesting conversation. And we can I can talk all fucking day about the othering of, especially the othering of like artificial intelligence in things like Star Trek and all of that, like where we're so conditioned to not see these life forms as people or as having a soul. And so because of that, they're less than and they're creepy. And that's really where a lot of David's creepiness comes from, right? Is from him not, being able, like he has all these really great lines, these like really like they're all framed as like really sinister lines, right? Because of like, the way that it's shot and the way that the music is behind it and everything, where he's, what does he say? He says stuff like, oh, I didn't think you had it in you. And then he's like, oh, pun intended or whatever, right? And then he's like, when Wayland's dead, I'll be free to do what I want, but I don't know what I want. And doesn't everybody want their parents dead? Like just these notions that are supposed to be really, those are so indicative of like the deep thoughts that people have, like just humans have that are like afraid to talk about and afraid to say, and I always really like that juxtaposition of like, this person, this organic life being thinks that they know what they want and they think that they're better because they know how to talk more, or they put themselves on this pedestal when it's like framed as sinister, when this machine, this synthetic life is really just saying and doing the things that they would do if they didn't have all of those societal inhibitions.
Yeah, I do think that like, especially with this character, there is sort of like an unnuanced earnestness that like obviously within the context of the narrative, it's construed as emotionless or soulless, but you're totally right. It is more of just like it's more of just assertive fact or opinion or sort of a sort of notion that they're trying to mischaracterize as soulless because of his creation, right?
And they like overtly say that too. Like our introduction to David as him being othered right from the get-go is Wayland's hologram, which those holograms were hella tight. I just want to say
they were great.
So good. But like he says like, oh, David's the closest thing I have to a son. He's not human and he can't appreciate life because he doesn't have a soul, right? And you see that David like frowns. And so we're being told this whole time that David doesn't have emotion, but he knows when he's being put down and when he's being looked down on, and like probably that's why he later on picks up the engineer's work and, just like it's like, cool, humanity, you're awful. But yeah, like he, like the whole time he's like made to be human, but he's not allowed to be human. And he does these things where he just watches, he consumes television, he learns all of our language, he learns everything to try to fit in, and he's still othered. And, like my favorite scene from this is when he is dyeing his roots in that ass TV room. I'm like, yes, love this. He's still denied any sort of any semblance of like, respect.
I do. I mean, really, what an iconic moment for him when he is dyeing his roots watching Lawrence of Arabia, and you just hear him, he's like painting his roots being like, I just pay the pain no mind. Just pay the pain no mind. Like trying out different syllabic ways to sort of perform this character who he's trying to be. Incredible. It's so funny and gay and like weird and just like it really does feel he's really trying to perform this sort of like masculine figure, right? He's trying to perform acceptable or digestible maleness through through cinema, through pop culture, through this lens. And so he's trying so hard to blend and to be and to pass as human. Oh, it's so great. I loved it. Truly so good.
You can tie that into Blade Runner into your Blade Runner analysis, right?
Yeah.
With like, the replicants then being like, because David is really like their great granddaddy, right? So so I like that read, and I like that tie-in.
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorite parts about David as a character in general, because he's just, he is a messy asshole, and I love it. So you brought it up earlier. There was like a scene. I want to bring this up because this is such a funny moment. Eric and I went and saw Alien Covenant in theaters, and do you remember the scene where David like flies the death ship to the planet and like kills that whole civilization?
Yes.
Okay. I remember we were watching that scene, and it's supposed to be like really sad and scary, and Eric just starts laughing really hard. And I remember thinking like, what the fuck? Why is he laughing? And after the movie, he was like, yeah, it's like the engineers just like cut off David's head and fucked him up. And he's like, oh yeah, for sure. Where do you live? Sorry, where do you live again?
What's your address?
What's your address? Let me. No. I gotta fly right over. Don't even worry about. But like, where's that again? Okay, cool. Yeah. No problem. And he just shows up and kills the entire planet. It's petty. It's so funny.
I had a point in this movie in Prometheus where I literally laughed out loud. But I was like, I don't think anybody else would, or like it's an inappropriate time to laugh. And it was when, I can't remember the character's name, but the guy with the glasses who eventually befriended the guy with the red hair, who's like, I'm not here to make friends. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So he gets infected.
Boy and his friend.
He gets infected, whatever. And then eventually, like, he just shows up outside, folded up like a pretzel, outside. And they see like, what's that? Everybody's like, what's that? And obviously they know he's missing.
Yeah.
And they see a body folded like a pretzel outside of the hatch.
Yeah.
So they send out this guy, one guy, no weapon, no nothing. And he just walks up to it. Like, why are you walking? What?
Like, you're literally on a different planet. Who else do you think is here?
Walks up. One guy walks up and he literally has a dumb look on his face. He's like, what's going on? And all of a sudden he like pounces up and like obviously kills him. I'm like, I started cracking up. I was like, this whole movie is really full of supposedly the most, like, some of the smartest scientists or whatever. And they're making one by one the most like aggressively dumb decisions.
Dumb mistakes. So horny to get on that planet.
It's just
like when they get into the cave and they're like, we can breathe in here, and they're like, yeah, let's all take off our helmets.
I was like, what the fuck are you doing?
You guys are scientists.
Yes.
You should know. You should do this.
Also, the geologist and the guy with the map with the things is like, they are the ones that get lost and can't find their fucking way back to the surface when they're presumably
don't you have a map
5 minutes away from the entrance. Yeah, and don't you're the guy with the map.
He's literally the guy they brought to make sure they don't get lost, has all of the capability and the industry to make sure that doesn't happen for the group. Then when he's by himself, not having to worry about anybody else, he gets lost himself. That is so silly. Also, granted, I loved it, but it's very silly.
How did it not extremely check silly. The transmissions? Like when they're like, well, what happened to them? We got to go find them. And like, they literally had like said, hey, come in. We're seeing this. And then they all die. And I was like, how can you not just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go check. Let me go check those comm logs, Yeah,
because they're recording everything, but we're supposed to believe that because Idris Elba and Charlize went fucking, that they have no clue.
And I
what
have shit
happened.
To say about Charlize Theron in this.
I mean, I do too. I love Charlize, but
I love her, but this was a bad role.
No, I thought she was the only like sensible character in the movie.
Well, because
she's just there trying to prove that she's worth something to men, to her daddy, and then this, like, all Idris has to say is like, oh yeah, are you a robot? And she's like, okay, let's fuck.
But
like,
she's the only one actually trying to keep people safe on the ship. She's the only one who's like, you are good. Like, she literally says, well, of course she doesn't like the fact that her power is taken away, because Waylon was like, now Numi replace, I can't remember her, Elizabeth Shaw and Charlie. He was like in the hologram, like, oh, these two are in charge. And then they kind of act like assholes because they're like, oh, we're in charge. And then like, it's like these two people, you know what I mean? Like I don't know. They kind of act like they're barking orders at people. It's like the new person at work being like, oh, I've been here 2 days and I'm going to tell everybody what to do or something. You know what I mean?
For sure.
But then Charlize Theron is like, you're going to go out there. You're not going to touch anything. You're just going to look at stuff and report back. And then they did not do that. And of course, contaminated the whole ship. And then she was the one who, when Charlie was, dying, obviously, of the virus that he got, she's like, he's not allowed back on the ship. And everybody's like, no, we got to try to save him. Like, there's no way to save him.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way. Like, I don't know. I think that she was painted to be the villain. Yeah. But I think that she actually was the most sensible person on that whole ship.
I agree with that. I think those are some really good points. I think my main gripe with her character is just that, because other than that, I mean, when she gets out of like cryostasis or whatever, she's just like fucking doing push-ups and stuff, right? She's like, I'm ready.
She's a little type A.
Yeah, she's like, okay, I'm here.
It's a little annoying, yeah.
But I feel like part of that is because all of her motivations, to me at least, seemed like she was trying to prove to men that she deserves to be there, or prove to her daddy that she can do stuff and she's ready to take over and all of that, because like she didn't want to be there. And like, yeah, she is the most sensible one, because I mean, nobody should want to go there, and
well, I mean, Elizabeth Shaw and Charlie definitely did. And I thought it was like kind of funny when like they came back to the ship and like they were kind of bummed out because I guess the engineers were dead. And they were like, so this whole mission was all in vain. And I'm like, really? You think it was all in vain? You found out like a bunch of information. Like Charlie was like kind of bummed, and he was like drinking. He's like, dude, this was a pointless mission. I'm like, how is it pointless?
So
you found some amazing shit.
You've been here for 5 minutes. You've 5 minutes.
It's also literally the opposite of the introduction, where it's like they find a shitty cave painting with 5 dots on it, and he's like, this is the most significant find of human history. They get to a new world, they find alien corpses, an entire dome, and hidden
and he's like, this
shit, and he's like, we wasted our time. You're like, shut up. You're so boring.
He is canonically an anti-masker. I mean, he's the first one to pull off his helmet, right?
Take off your mask and just breathe. Just breathe the air. It's good for you.
I laughed better than the air on Earth. That's what they literally said. It's better than the air on Earth.
Yeah. Oh my God. He's so bad.
Fucking messy.
Like, everybody made so many dumb decisions, one after another in this movie.
Yeah.
I was just like laughing so much.
Well, also, I want to dig into some of the, going back to the sort of theology or the theist perspective in the writing. Like, when she gets back on the ship after Holloway dies, when Shaw is on the table, David says to her, my dearest condolences, and then grabs her cross necklace. And he says, I'm going to have to take this. It may be contaminated.
My fucking favorite line in this whole movie. My favorite fucking line.
It was so on the nose. I'm like, shut
up. Everything's contaminated. Like, why?
Yeah. But it's so very funny. Clearly like the close above the cross, like, your faith is it's contaminated. Like, oh, really? She's having a fucking like a change of heart or a faith crisis. Like, and the line is, this emblem of faith is like, oh my God, stop. That's too much. You need to quit it. You need to quit it.
I know.
I loved it for the sake of it being so on the nose. So there was that one. And then he also tells her, it must feel like your God abandoned you. And you're like, yes.
I did.
Amazing.
I did like that line.
And
that
then
kind of made me giggle.
Oh, so fantastic. And then later when she's helping him after everyone else is dead and it's just Shaw and David, she's like, where's my cross? And he's like, even after all this, you still believe, don't you?
Oh my God.
Too much. And then there's literally another. There's so many.
Yep.
When she's like, I'm still gonna like go search where they're from. I want to go there. He's like, the answer is irrelevant. I don't understand why you'd want to know. And she says, I guess that's because I'm a human being and you're a robot, which is just like this sort of really, really base level for like, I have faith and you don't. Like, shut up. This is so like, stop it. See, and it's the level of how on the nose and how regularly it was text. It was literally script text. It was visuals. It was structure. It was narrative. So of like the rebirth and the Lord and the faith that I'm like, you should have gone the next step. You really just should have.
You should have just had the Jesus engineers
just
crucified.
do it. You've literally written a movie around this scene. You've written this whole thing to be this. You've implied it how many times? Like, give us this. Give us the engineer Jesus now. Give it to us. It's so silly. I mean,
I think oh my God. Yeah.
With all that said, though, am I still into this movie? Absolutely. So I still love this movie. I still think it's so, I mean, it has problems, but I still think it's so fun. And like, I love the suits. I love like all of the tech. I like the way that the aliens look, and it's like we were made in his image. I mean, again, very on the nose, but like, I loved it all. And then the literally the pointless mask lights. Like, I mean, obviously, like, the only reason they were there was to illuminate the actors.
Yeah.
But I mean,
that's in the originals too. Like, they do that too.
But I just think that's one of those things in cinema when it comes to like astronauts where they have to put the lights in the helmet to illuminate the face.
Yeah.
Because I mean, how obstructing is that light in the helmet? Like, you would not be able to see out of your helmet.
Yeah, you wouldn't.
With all of those lights.
It's just purely just to show who's talking.
And I mean, it made them look gorgeous. It the yellow green light. I was like, ooh. It just, I don't know. I love the way it looked. I like the discovery element. I like the adventure. As silly as it was, I'm still like into it. And all the body horror shit. Like the breaking of the arm was fucked.
Oh yeah.
And then when like the plastic from the helmet melts onto his face, gorgeous. And then the fucking thing goes down his throat. You're just like, yes. And then again, the pretzel body, hilarious.
Yeah. Pretzel body. It was just like, it was like zombie. My whole favorite scene of this whole movie was the C-section scene.
Are you kidding me? How scary is that?
The C-section scene was so fucked up.
Yes.
I loved it. It was disturbing. It was like, I thought it was kind of funny that she tried to be like, oh, type in C-section. It's calibrated to only a male. And I'm like, but this was in Charlize Theron's quarters. Why would it be calibrated to me? And also, it's the future. Can't you just like press a button and you know what I mean? Like,
I had that same question for something as high tech as that was, and for it being in this character's quarters. Why is it on this preset, or why is this model only set to operate on men? When there are very few differences body wise. Like, I just
exactly.
It
for
seems...
me, it like went. It's because it was strictly because they wanted to talk about reproductive rights.
Yeah,
and I was like, okay, cool. Like, you know, we've already talked about how
I wonder.
Is so fucking on the nose with this, right? Like,
I just had an idea.
It was too much.
I just had an idea. Do you think David might have had something to do with it?
Programming
it so that it only was for male patients only. Ooh, I just thought of that.
Knowing what he was doing with the... I mean, that's totally possible.
Yeah.
I just thought of that. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, in the moment, it did add an element of like I did like, despite why it was there, I mean, that would be a really good justification for it, and I would appreciate that within the story, but they didn't imply it at all, so I'm kind of like,
no.
I feel like this was just, I feel like it was like a lousy take on it, but the moment when like, the amplification of the fear in the scene as sort of a feminist critique and a commentary, I thought like in the moment as it's happening, I'm like, yeah, that is the patriarchy. Like, yeah, fucked up.
Yeah,
that's 100%. So sick.
Yeah.
Because,
but
like,
of course.
think about it. Like in the scene just prior to that, like David is saying, like, have you had sex? Like, you're 3 months pregnant.
Yes.
We're putting you in cryostasis. And she's saying, I don't want this. I don't want this. And he's like, it must feel like your God abandoned you. Right.
Yeah.
And and then he like the other thing we didn't talk about was her dad, like, and her were missionaries in Africa.
Oh yeah, that was in the beginning though.
Her dad like died of Ebola, right? And I was like, okay, like this is all weird and gross. We don't even have time for this. But but then like this whole thing is like, you know, because there's like this huge religious subtext, right, about like, you know, access to abortion and reproductive rights within the church, within like, you know, faith and all of that, right? So even though like it's an abomination that is inside of her that she did not want and was not consent, like there was no consent, she still cannot get rid of it because the person that actually surprisingly believes in all of this, which is David, right, is not allowing her that. And so she has to go outside of that into an unsafe situation to take care of this thing that is going to kill her otherwise, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, and then for the entire rest of the movie, she's cradling her womb and she's fucking bleeding. She's like, when she's talking to Waylon, when she's seeing like the last like 45 minutes of the movie, she's doing all of that after just having an unsafe C-section.
Like, I don't know if you've ever had like an abdominal surgery before, but like I've had my appendix out and I couldn't even pick up a backpack for like a month without being like, oh.
And that's honestly one of the most terrifying parts of this.
I know, she was running around and like her staples are going to come out. Her staples are going to come out. Like it's so gross. Like I was like, like, I could feel her pain. I could literally feel her pain
because of how quick the surgery was and how like also like cool, got it out, but then there's the immediate danger of it being out. I mean, like, oh shit, well now I have to leave. And it's just like, no, your stomach, like, stop, fucking, oh my God, good, like, sit down. I'm like, what? But you can't because you're in danger, like, shit. And then it's like literally,
they literally had the audacity while she's bleeding after having after giving herself an abortion, right? Like these men have the audacity to look at her and like criticize her for not going to meet her God and saying, where's your faith? While she's holding her bleeding womb, right? And I was like, this is the critique on religion that I'm here for, you know?
Yeah. I think there was a level of like within the whole theistic aspects of it that I know that there's an intentional like God isn't real sort of narrative, especially in this dichotomy and of like, well, who created us? Well, you found them, but who created them? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly.
That whole vibe. But it was bizarre throughout the entire thing before we got to that moment where it did really feel like the heroistic persona was the believer or the faith haver, and the scientist, the evolutionary, like these characters were seen as like soulless or bad or negative or like anti. And throughout the whole thing, I was kind of like, wait, I don't remember this. This is weird. Why is this being painted this way? You know what I mean? But again, at the end, I'm happy that it was kind of wrapped up like, oh yeah, no, God's not real. Yeah. So what do you guys want to do? Like,
well, okay. And like David kind of alludes to that throughout the whole thing, right? Because people are like, well, you know, like while everybody's questioning their faith around him, he's kind of like, he's poking and prodding at them, right? And they're like, well, and he's like, look, I was designed like this because you people are more comfortable interacting with your own kind. And the husband is like, whatever, we didn't get answers, blah, 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 blah. And David is kind of like challenging him on that, right? He's like, well, what did you want? Like, why did you like, he's like, I wanted to know why they created us. And he's like, well, why did you guys create me? And he's like, I don't know, because we can. And he's like, oh, I guess that would be a disappointing answer, wouldn't it? You know? And I'm like, oh, that's good. That's good. Like, I like give that to him. And like, none of the humans in this are even smart enough to take that as a critique and to be like, oh, yeah, why did we make Snuggies? Because we could. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to have a meaning or have like, you know, I mean, that's just my own personal belief, you know, like, because you could, because this is something that you could do to challenge yourself. And so I'm just like, yeah, man, I'm on your team, David.
Yeah.
You know?
I did like how queer-coded David was throughout the entirety of it. Again, going back to what I was talking about like performing maleness, performing masculinity in this way where like he'll never be that thing, but he's constantly performing it as if he is, as sort of a way to like hide. I mean, oftentimes too, like all of his movement, I feel like not to say like gay men are robots, but like like I don't want to get to that implication, but there is a level of like his gestures were very fluid, it was very stoic, it was very like just fluid, I guess. And it really, the scene of him watching
kind of genderless, right?
A little genderless, but like in a way that feels very like genderless with the mask of maleness, like a literal mask, MASC, right? Like it felt very that, and like even when he's like making what is her name, Charlize? Whatever, I'm gonna say Charlize.
When he's making, say the actress.
Yeah, right. When he's making Charlize a cocktail, just like the way he's pouring the vodka, like it's just like also like not to be whatever, but like vodka, like hey queen, what's up? Like boop, and then just like I don't know, there was a lot of that constantly, and I think I liked that this sort of queer-coded character, this character who's trying to perform maleness at all times, was the one who was the most critical, like in a way, like he's trying to acknowledge his humanity or his existence in this way that is fabricated, but he's constantly like critiquing everybody else's performance as if they're also performing, which to some degree we all are, right? And so like his constant dissent and his constant like musings and these kind of like snide shitty remarks, like again it's like, oh, where's your god now, queen, like that kind of stuff, it just felt very, it honestly, it did feel very queer to me.
He's like comfortable enough with himself and his motives that he is like, he doesn't question that. In fact, he like, you know, kind of like studies like human behaviors and things like that, right? To like, you know, to try to like take that in to make other people feel comfortable with him. But like a lot of like, none of that changes who he is inherently, you know, like for who he is, he's just like, cool, this is who I am. And any like snide remark or anything like, you know, any sort of time that we see him being like, or perceived as like combative, he's just questioning other people and their motives, right? Or he's like, he's distilling what they're doing and what they're feeling down to this, like down to its essence, you know, very, you know, Spock like you were saying, like very logical. And the only reason why it's hurtful or why it's, you know, seemed as like hostile is because
it's blunt.
He's right.
Yeah. And that to me, I think that's like the queerest element of it too, is because he's the only one who's ever had to be as introspective as can be for the most part, because his literal existence is constantly questioning where he fits in, because he is so outside of the expected normalcy of humanity. So he was born on the fringes. He had to discover this, and throughout the entire process had to perform as if he wasn't who he was constantly, which is again kind of like, as queer people who are in the closet, like you're performing this other version of yourself that's acceptable by society. And so for him, that's like the level of queerness that I love about this character, because of the constant, it's like, well, I know how I'm supposed to be because I've spent time building this character. Who are you? And why are you acting that way? Because that's also a performance. So why are you doing that? And I'm like, oh, cool.
And like everybody else has lived this unexamined life, you know, where they're just like, oh, I'm the person and God and this, and they literally have not had to look themselves in the mirror. And that's why this is so uncomfortable, because they've been looking for answers externally instead of internally.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And he is the chaotic queer who's trying to fuck things up.
Yes.
He's just here to party. Oh my gosh.
Can we shout out Shaw, who like does all the work for everybody out? Like she's like a one-woman show on this whole thing. She's like a geologist and like a scientist and a molecular biologist and a surgeon and all of that. Like she is the only person that I feel like did anything except for hold a gun in that movie.
I mean,
is that fair?
No, it's totally fair.
Too, but like both of them.
Yeah, I mean, the only other people on that ship who had any sort of credibility or skill was Idris, the pilot. Just because, I mean, that's an like obvious skill to get there. And everybody else had like, the pup guy had his contraption. He just knew like rocks and this tech that he had, and that was like his capability. And I think everyone else was, for the most part, like, Charlize was there because she had money.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess you're totally right. Like, and then who fucking Holloway? Holloway was just a reckless frat boy who was like, let's go together. And you're like, shut up.
One of my favorite lines was when they both come out of cryostasis together, and he's like, "We made it, baby," and she's like, "Uh-huh," and she just like pukes all over herself. I was like, "Oh my god, this is so romantic."
Also, it really fucked me up that nobody had met each other before they left. It was like a surprise.
That's exactly.
I was like what do you mean?
What kind of like actual scientific voyage mission would you like? You would totally have like a game plan before you left. You know,
yes, you would
everybody
know
would have met each other.
These people would be
makes no sense.
Yeah,
the most fratty frat crew they could get. Like, like nobody knew what they were doing, and they were like, "Oh, fuck this, I'm
very
out."
silly, very silly.
It was very silly.
I think I'm done with this movie.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I think I don't have anything else to say. Yeah, no.
Let's roll to the intro or the outro. We did it.
That's it. Cool. So, final thoughts. Let's start with the first film, with Alien. Eric, what did you think? Who was it for?
I mean, horror fans everywhere. Also, it was for Sigourney Weaver's career. Just base level. Boom.
Steph, who do you think this movie was for?
Well, I think it's made for horror fans everywhere.
Yeah.
It was groundbreaking. It was awesome. It's also for women.
Oh yeah.
Hell yeah. Yeah,
yes.
I doubled down on that. I think this was for women because how cool was it to like see ourselves in Ripley and not be like a diluted or like version of a woman or like an over exaggerated women. Like, I don't know. It was
it's
for
not
women.
like we said before. It wasn't like the Hollywood feminist kind of like trope. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was just perfect
100%.
Female, strong character. Perfect.
We
Perfect.
stand.
Yeah.
Yes.
Eric, did you like it?
I loved it. I think it's such a good movie, and I'm so happy we did it.
Yeah, same. What do you think, Steph?
I love this movie. Yes, I have since I was a kid. Love it. It's perfect.
What about you, Jess?
I also stand this movie. It's so good. It's I love the Alien franchise, and even the bad parts of it, just give it to me. It's fine. Like, I will watch Winona Ryder. And, like, I mean, even like when it's bad, it's just kind of like laughably bad. But like the Alien and Aliens are canonically incredible.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, we'll always watch.
Let me just say something a little bit about Alien 3, because Alien 3, I think it could have been an amazing movie. It really could have been. Because she's like on a prison planet full of like rapists and like all this stuff, like, and she has to fight for herself constantly. But the thing is, it's directed by David Fincher, and he's an amazing director. Everything he's done has been great, but he's even like, I'm disappointed by Alien, and it was Alien 3, sorry, because he didn't have a script. There wasn't like a full script when he started, and he just kept on getting pushed back from, I think it was like 20th Century Fox, right?
Oh, wow.
It was just like a big clusterfuck of making a movie, and it didn't come out the way he wanted it to. So it could have been, it could have been something really great, because I think the whole concept of Alien 3 was really great, but it just didn't land.
Yeah, like I remember watching it and I was just like, this could have been good. This could have been better. And like, especially
and the
knowing
CGI was horrible.
David Fincher like is capable of such better work, you know, like, and everybody in that film, you know, and I just feel it was just such a disappointment because it could have been so incredible.
Too bad. Anyway, sorry.
No, I absolutely agree. All right. Okay. So Prometheus, Eric, was this new, interesting, or the same, progressive, regressive? How has the story evolved with today's ideals?
I thought it was both new and interesting, neither of which are a positive. But I thought it was both new and interesting. I thought it was relatively regressive for the state of Alien as like an idea, as like a canon of like the Ridley Scott Alien. I thought it was regressive just because it kind of took away from the lore a little bit, again, with revealing a little bit too much about the history, even though I loved it, but I love exposition, so hey. And then I don't think it really did evolve with today's ideas. I feel like the narrative was so structured in this old conversation of faith versus no faith. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What do you think, Steph?
I don't think it was new. I agree with what you said, like the whole like sci-fi mixed with religion. I don't think that's a new thing, you know? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do think it was like an interesting take on evolution, or like the birth of whatever the alien is. Like I said before, I kind of like the idea that it's a mysterious thing and that's what makes it scary. Yeah. So I basically thought that this whole like origin story was unnecessary.
Absolutely. Like, I feel like it was like this movie was not new. It was interesting just because I like exposition, but yeah, it was definitely not new, and it felt regressive to me because it was going back to these like really gross old tropes where I'm just like, there's a better way. Like, if you have to do the science versus religion thing, or like, you know, bring faith into that, like there's a better way to do that. And it's definitely not being so on the nose where you are pulling a crucifix from a woman's neck and saying this is contaminated, right?
Yeah.
Like,
so on the nose.
Yeah. So, and I feel like it really hasn't evolved. Like, this was literally exposition, the movie, basically.
Yeah.
and they couldn't even get all of it in the first one. In this one, they had to go on and do a Covenant, you know, which like really that all should have been one movie, like those two. And it would have been better. But yeah, no, it was regressive, and it was gross to me in those aspects. So now, Eric, who was this movie for?
Jesus.
Engineer Jesus.
Engineer Jesus. And honestly, justice for Engineer Jesus. We need it. We need it as a fandom. We need it.
Steph, who do you think this is for?
It wasn't for fans of Alien, I don't think. I really don't. Like, it was nothing like the original series. I think it was for Ridley Scott.
Yeah.
I think that's who it was for.
I think that it was... Yeah, you're right. It was definitely not for Alien fans, and it could have been, but it was not for Alien fans. It was literally just a cash grab. It was not good. It was disappointing.
Yeah.
Eric, did you like it?
I did. Oh my God. I honestly, even still with all the critique, still on board. I love an origin story. I love super over thought out history. Like, it was too much, and that's why I loved it.
What about you, Steph?
No, I didn't like it. I saw it in theaters and I didn't like it, and then the second time I watched it, I disliked it even more. I'm sorry, I sound like a Debbie Downer.
No, I honestly, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more that it's a bad movie. Like, it's not great.
We're here
but
for
I
this.
still,
So you like
I'm
it
still
ironically. I see. Okay.
A little, yeah.
There's this.
Yes. It's like me, and I love 90s action movies like Cliffhanger and like Escape from LA and stuff like that. Like, I love those movies like so much, but it's because they're funny to me. But they're not supposed to be funny.
I'm with Eric on this one. I still liked it. I like context. I like knowing more. I am gonna go and watch those shorts before this movie 100%. But did we need this? Absolutely not. Like, I feel like this was this is just a silly time. You just put this on in the background and it's fine. Like, it hits enough of that, like, those sci-fi tropes for me. And I just really like David as a character. So I'm just like, yeah, cool. This is excellent.
Yeah.
Is it good? No. But is it fun? Yes, it's fun.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
before you go, Steph, is there anything that you wanted to plug before you leave us? We thank you so much for coming. This was such a great,
and thank you for having me.
Fun.
It's one of my favorite subjects to talk about ever. Just that my band background character, we have a music video out now, and it's very funny. It's like a mock black metal music video.
Yes.
Oh hell yeah.
The guys did such a really funny job. I'm in it like a little bit, but they did like such a funny job. And it's a 2-song music video. It's called Edgy Youth Group Pastor and Darker Than Black.
That is so on brand for this episode.
Yes. So you can go look at that. And then also check out my other podcast, the Spicy Girls GRRLS podcast.
Hell yeah. Awesome.
Gorgeous.
We will link that in the show notes so you can find Steph. Thank you this was so great.
It was fun.
Steph,
I love
seriously, thank you for doing this. It's really good to talk to you. Thank you for doing the podcast.
This is great.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Don't forget to rate and review us if you haven't already. You can also become a patron at patreon.com/NOTstalgia. Link is in the show notes. We're on also all of the social media, all the stuff, whatever. Artwork and music is by Eric Lefebvre. Editing is by Danny Barkley. And thank you, Eric and Steph.
Thank you, Jess. And Steph.
Yeah. Thank you.
And remember, stay cute.
Stay critical. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bum, 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 bum. This podcast has been brought to you by the NOTstalgia Network.
Visit the NOTstalgiaNetwork.com for more.
You enter the dungeon and see the evil wizard pointing his wand directly at you. He says, "Show me a funny and delightful actual play Dungeons & Dragons podcast, or I'll consume your souls!" What do?
I take out my phone and find Quest Friends Forever on Spotify.
I show him how to find Quest Friends Forever on Apple Podcasts.
I share the Quest Friends Forever Instagram and YouTube pages with him.
And you all get critical hits!
Yay!
Quest Friends Forever is an actual play podcast starring 4 friends with varying levels of Dungeons & Dragons experience. Join us for new episodes every other Wednesday as we embark on fantasy adventures, play fast and loose with the rules, and laugh at each other's shenanigans. No prior D&D knowledge is required to listen, so everyone can feel free to join the fun. Quest Friends 4, that's the number 4, like how there's 4 of us, ever. Find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. That's Quest Friends Forever.